Good morning, everybody. This is Pastor Patti with your check-in for Monday, July 27th. Can you believe it's already the end of July? By next Monday when we check in, it'll be August. Hard to believe. Our focus this morning sort of follows up on yesterday's text and message talking about the kingdom of God. And I'm using 1 Corinthians 4:20. The kingdom of God is not just a lot of talk. It is living by God's power. Also, an easier translation for some might be, for the kingdom of God is not in word, but in power. The word power exudes sometimes somebody lording or reigning over somebody else. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about just strength. Strength in the belief that when you believe that God, your Father, sacrificed his one and only Son for you, there is power in that. There is power in knowing that he is guiding your life. And if you allow him to, he will show you the way that you need to go. Whether you're attending church, well, right now we're all online, I guess. Sorry about that, friends. But when you're attending church online or even when you're here, it's easy to be in that moment and be all gung ho God. But you know what? It gets a little harder when you turn the computer off or you walk out the doors because then you go to your workplace, you go to the grocery store. You might even take your kids or your grandkids someplace and you're bombarded with the world that we live in, bombarded with the fact that nobody is happy right now. At least that's how it seems. And I think that in the midst of where we are, we can show happiness to others. In the midst of where we are, we can think outside the box and be creative in how we reach out and how we serve God. And I think that shows power. I think it shows power when we stand up for what we believe in, but in a way that doesn't ostracize somebody else. Because, we all have our own opinions because God created each of us individually. And isn't that awesome? One of the things is a reminder is from First Thessalonians chapter 2, where it says, walk in a manner worthy of the God who calls you into his kingdom and glory. It's easy for us to say this, but we need to put it to action. We need to align our minds with God's truth. And I would ask you this question. Where do you see God's kingdom in your life? I gave you some examples yesterday. This coming weekend, my family will be heading to Knoebels, and yeah, I'm going for a day. Pastor Patti, the whole camping thing doesn't fly a whole lot. But when they go to Knoebels, they have ways of representing ourselves. How we choose to respond to the mask issue, how we choose to respond to just getting together as a family. And that will show others around us God's kingdom at work. Here at the church, I know it's disappointing that we're not in service in person, sorry. And I feel that. But I hope that as you're watching us online and joining us that way, that you can feel the power and the strength of God coming through whatever means. I know as a pastoral staff and as different teams, we're really working hard on thinking outside the box of how we can continue to get people involved in a way that is safe for everybody. And, one of the things I'm asking you to do this week is think about how you show God's kingdom on earth. One of the ways was we offered Vacation Bible School, and that took God's kingdom out through this computer screen all over the country for those who wanted to watch it. That's taking that opportunity to share God's love, walking that walk. It's understanding that as we honor the rules that are being set down, that we do so in a way that is gratifying to God. And I kept thinking, how do we remember in the midst of all this chaos? How do we remember to honor God and show everyone around us what God's kingdom is like, especially when we can't do our normal things, because it's easier some days to be able to do that. Two ways I'm going to talk to you about. One is think about an example of how you've seen God's kingdom working in your world. How have you been able to share God's kingdom? And I'd love to hear that from you. The other thing when I was doing some research on these verses, Jeremy Treat challenged people to sum up the kingdom of God in 8 words or less. And here's what he said: God's reign through God's people over God's place. That's hard to do. And think about what he just said: God's reign, God's power over us here in God's place that he created. So I thought I'd give it a shot. And let me tell you, it's harder than you think. Here's what I came up with. And it's not great, friends, so no high expectations here. Walking hand in hand, sharing God's love everywhere. So that's my summary of God's kingdom here on earth. If you can come up with it, I'll give you 10 words or less and share it with me. I would love to hear it. And if I get any, I'll share them out with the congregation. I hope you have an awesome week. Stay safe. God bless.